Prison Break: The Man Who Mailed Himself to Freedom. Richard Lee McNair was born in Oklahoma in 1958 into a hard-working family. He grew up with ordinary dreams: to serve his country, to have a normal life. Those who knew him in his youth described him as bright, polite, and respectful. He was athletic, intelligent, and showed signs of strong discipline early on. After finishing high school, McNair joined the United States Air Force. There, he worked as a sergeant and was considered reliable and capable, but something changed after he left the service. Civilian life didn't come easy. He drifted from job to job, struggling with money and direction. In 1987, his life took a devastating turn. One night in Minot, North Dakota, McNair broke into a grain storage warehouse, hoping to steal some cash or equipment to sell. It was supposed to be quick and quiet, but two police officers responded to a burglar alarm. McNair panicked. In the chaos, he pulled a gun and fired. Officer Ron Hilliard was killed, and another officer was seriously wounded. McNair was arrested shortly after. In court, the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 30 years in prison for murder, attempted murder, and burglary. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. A life behind concrete walls and steel bars. But McNair wasn't like most people. He was intelligent, resourceful, and patient. 3 qualities that make a dangerous combination inside prison walls. Less than a year after his sentencing, in 1988, McNair attempted his first escape. Using nothing more than a tube of lip balm, he greased his hands and squeezed through a narrow ventilation shaft at the county jail. For a few precious hours, he was free. But the authorities quickly caught him hiding nearby. That didn't discourage him. It educated him. Each failed attempt became a lesson. In 1992, McNair made another break for freedom, this time from a federal penitentiary in Oakdale, Louisiana. He managed to climb out of the facility during the night. Again, he was captured, but he was learning the system, understanding the routines, the blind spots, and how the guards thought. By the early 2000s, McNair had been transferred to the U.S. Penitentiary in Pollock, Louisiana, a high-security facility surrounded by fences, guards, and razor wire. It was considered nearly impossible to escape. Inside Pollock, McNair worked in a prison industry program called Unicor, which repaired mailbags and canvas pouches for the U.S. Postal Service. It was monotonous work, repetitive, loud, and dusty. But McNair saw something no one else noticed: the mailbags and shipping crates that constantly left the prison grounds. Every day, boxes were filled, sealed, and sent out through the loading dock to postal distribution centers. Guards checked paperwork, but rarely examined every item. The system ran on habit and routine, the perfect weakness for someone patient enough to exploit it. McNair began to plan his escape carefully, quietly. He paid attention to which shipments left the prison, where they went, and what time they were picked up. He studied the behavior of the guards, memorizing their habits, their routes, their level of attention. He started to build his escape crate, a wooden box just large enough to fit inside without drawing attention. The box would be filled with repaired mailbags stacked around him to make it look normal. He drilled small holes in the wood for air and brought along water, snacks, and a flashlight. He wrapped himself in plastic to mask his scent in case dogs were nearby. Every detail mattered. McNair tested the crate multiple times, pretending to be cleaning or rearranging items in the workshop. No one suspected a thing. On April 5, 2006, it was time. McNair climbed into his crate early that morning, sealed the lid from inside, and waited. He could hear the workers moving around him, talking, and loading other boxes onto the truck. Eventually, the forklift lifted his crate, rolled it out of the prison warehouse, and set it onto a truck bound for a postal center in Alexandria, Louisiana. The truck passed through the gates. Just like that, McNair was outside. The guards had no idea a human being was hidden among the mailbags. Hours later, the truck arrived at the distribution center. McNair waited in silence. The air was hot, thick, and suffocating. He had no way to know how much time had passed or whether it was safe. He waited until the warehouse grew quiet, then carefully pushed the lid open and slipped out. He was free. McNair walked away into the night, calm and steady. He found a nearby parking lot, discarded his prison clothes, and vanished. By morning, when prison officials discovered his absence, McNair was already miles away. The initial assumption was that he must have escaped through a fence or a tunnel. Only later did investigators realize he had literally mailed himself out of one of the most secure prisons in the country. McNair began traveling across the southern United States. He kept a low profile, driving back roads, using fake names, and taking small jobs for cash. He dyed his hair, grew facial hair, and changed his appearance frequently. He never stayed in one place for long. Then came a moment that would later make headlines. In Ball, Louisiana, a local police officer noticed a man jogging near railroad tracks early one morning. The man looked suspicious. He matched the general description of a fugitive. The officer stopped him and started a casual conversation, recorded by his dash cam.
What is? We got an escapee.
Oh, shit. Where from?
Prison.
There's a prison here?
Yeah.
Huh.
McNair was smooth, friendly, and confident. He claimed he was staying at a nearby hotel, out for a morning jog before work. He even joked with the officer about the heat. The officer, convinced he was just a traveler, thanked him for his time and let him go. Only later, after McNair's picture was released nationally, did the officer realize he had just spoken face-to-face with one of the country's most wanted fugitives. McNair continued north, eventually crossing the Canadian border. He lived under several false identities, using fake IDs and stolen cars. He wrote letters to journalists back in the United States, mocking the authorities and describing life on the run. He claimed he wasn't dangerous anymore, just a man trying to live quietly after proving he could beat the system. For over a year and a half, he managed to stay hidden, but in October 2007, his luck ran out in Campbellton, New Brunswick. Local police found a man sleeping inside a stolen car in a parking lot. When they woke him, he bolted. Officers chased him down and tackled him after a short pursuit. Fingerprints confirmed his identity. It was Richard Lee McNair. After 18 months of freedom, the escape artist's run was finally over. He was extradited back to the United States and placed in the federal Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, a DX Florence, the most secure facility in the country. It houses the nation's most dangerous and high-profile prisoners, including terrorists, cartel leaders, and spies. Escape from ADX Florence is considered impossible. Since his capture, McNair has lived under the tightest possible supervision. He spends nearly 23 hours a day in his cell, with only brief time for exercise in a small enclosed yard. Every movement is monitored. There are no mailbags, no workshops, and no opportunities for clever engineering. Over the years, he's become somewhat of a legend, a symbol of both intelligence and misplaced brilliance. He wasn't violent after his crime, but his cunning made him famous. People debated whether to admire his ingenuity or condemn his manipulation. His escape has been studied by law enforcement agencies as a case of extreme creativity under confinement. It showed that security failures often come from human complacency, from routine and overconfidence. For McNair, freedom wasn't about money or revenge, it was about control. He once told investigators he escaped not because he hated prison, but because he wanted to prove that he could do something no one else could. But in the end, the system caught up. The man who mailed himself to freedom found that there's no box big enough to escape his past. Today, Richard Lee McNair remains behind bars, where he'll spend the rest of his life. Yet his story continues to fascinate people around the world, not because of violence or chaos, but because he used intelligence, patience, and a deep understanding of human behavior to pull off one of the most unbelievable prison escapes in modern history. He didn't dig tunnels, climb fences, or overpower guards. He simply studied the system, built a box, and mailed himself out, proving once again that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is the human mind.